Finally, let's take a look at how to read and write CSV files. I'm going to go back to the slides we had, and we saw two examples. Like working with CSV files, you do need to import CSV library, right? And to read, you can just use read open, use the name of the CSV file, the data file, wherever that is. Make sure you put the correct path, and in the reading mode as files. And then there we can actually use what we call CSV reader. Basically, you use CSV library. Within the library, use the reader function, and you feed in the file. Then the content goes to CSV reader or any variable you define here. I just use CSV_reader and then you can actually loop over the content. Right, the content is basically all the information you have in the CSV file. Right, for writing, similar to reading, the major difference is now you're in the writing mode. So W, you have to kind of mention that if you want to go to new line or not, and then you can actually use csv.write function, basically the writer function from CSV library. Let's quickly take a look at, let's go back to VS Code environment. Now, as a straightforward approach, I'm just gonna do reading CSV file. So my function read CSV file takes in the CSV file name in the reading mode, and I see I have this kind of yellow line there. It's telling me that, well, you're using CSV, but it's not defined, right? And this is coming here because I have Pylance extension, right? It's giving me this warning. I can import CSV. Basically, that's how we import libraries to Python environment. And this is a library that comes with Python, so you don't need to install it. Import CSV. I define this function, read open. The reader reads the file, and then what I did here, instead of printing line by line, I just converted the content into a list. Remember, list function, right? It converts everything basically you feed into a list, and then it returns the data in the format of a list since it's converted. Now, I do need to create a CSV file to read it. So let's just go with data.csv, and then there I have some, let me bring in some dummy data, at least few lines, so we can actually read it. Let's use this. I actually don't need this. So name and age, let's say, right? So let's read CSV file, and then this one actually returns some values, so I'm just going to use print, and my file is here. So right click, copy relative path, and then put it as a string input. If I run that, I can close this. I say this is my list, right? So I get the nested list. The first item is a nested list, name, age. Second item is a nested list, Alice 30. Third item is Bob 25, right? In an Excel format or CSV format, this is your first column, this is your second column. Depending on whether or not you want the first item, which is basically name of the columns, you may or may not skip it, right? That kind of is up to you. You can return the data in a, like, just print it, or you can just put it in a dictionary format. It's up to you. Remember, we talked about the way the data can be returned. I just convert everything into a list, but I could do a little bit more something more fancy, and put the data in a dictionary. I'll leave it to you to play around with it. Define a key value pairs, and then put it in a dictionary. That might be a little nicer. We'll talk about data frames later on when we talk about pandas. You will see the kind of a tight connection between dictionaries and data frames. All right, so let's talk about writing CSV files. I'm going to bring my function here. It's very similar with open as file. The status now is on W, which is writing. This time, since I'm writing, I need to give the file name and what I want to write. I'm using the writer function, which is from CSV. I already imported CSV, but just to make this block of code independent from the other block, I bring the import CSV again. You only need to import a library once if you're running a code. If you import it again, it really doesn't affect how fast the run is going. The code is going to run, but it's not really good practice. So just try to keep things neat. And in Python codes, we import all the libraries we need all the way at the beginning of the file. You'll see more codes, and you'll get a sense of how these things are organized in a general script. All right. So going back to the story. All right. So we have csv.write and then write rows. Let me kind of make this a little more clear by bringing some data. All right, this is a data. These are nested lists, very similar to what we read. I'm just now trying to write, and then let's write CSV file, and then let's do one. I'm gonna kind of copy the path for the other file output, but output CSV write, and I'm gonna do a CSV file, and then I will run this. Yeah, I'm getting an error because I actually did not define the data. So data is data. So I'm gonna run this, shift enter, and if I go to my Explorer, I actually see my output CSV write, and if I open that, I get the data that I fed into my CSV file. Okay. So this is the approach that we use for now to read and write text files and read and write CSV files. Later on, you will see when we talk about pandas, things get a little easier because you can just use pandas libraries and functions there to read and write CSV files, text files, or Excel files. But for now and for the homework you're going to get after this lecture, you are not allowed to use any library except the ones that are explicitly identified or mentioned in the homework assignment. And pandas and NumPy libraries are not those libraries. You only get the CSV. So I want to make sure you understand that you have to read and write files for now using pure Python, and you shouldn't be using any other library. I can actually give you another example, but that would be very similar to this one. The only difference is there is this function called DICT writer, or kind of dictionary writer. So instead of feeding the data in the form of nested loops, you can actually feed the data in the form of a dictionary to your function, which might be a little easier and might make more sense, especially in the sense of thinking of your data as an Excel file or CSV file with headers. So here is the function. I'm importing CSV files, file, data, and now I have a new input headers. So I say with open file in the writing format, a new line, as file. Now I'm using this function called DICT writer, and if you hover your mouse over that function, you can see actually all the possible options. I'm not going to go over all these possible options that you can set for this function. I'll let you explore that, but I feed in the file which I opened, and the field names option, which is one of the possible options, is set to headers, and then I do write headers and write rows. So it's a little different. We went from writer, simply just to write a CSV file, to first use dict writer and then write header. Right? Now, how do we use this? Let's define a data, and this time I'm using a list, but inside the list I'm defining a dictionary. Right? Name is Alice. Age is 30. So this is my first entry. Second entry is name is Bob, and age is 25. Now I need headers, so my headers, you define them simply using a list, name and age, and then you can do write CSV with headers. I'm gonna kind of steal this from here. CSV headers, and then data, then headers as an input. Now if I run that, if I didn't make any mistake, this is going to create a CSV file for me, and the name would be, I'm gonna see, close these, would be CSV write headers, and now you get the same thing, right? Name, age, Alice. This is the title or column names, first entry, second entry. So it's kind of it gives you the same output, but the idea is that this form of giving or feeding the data might make more sense. Again, we will see later on how there is a very tight relationship or kind of similarity between dictionaries and data frames, and data frames are can be defined using dictionaries. So it's good to actually have a sense of, or better to say, it's good to feed the data in the form of a set of dictionaries within a list, but it's not super critical. You can use either of these methods to write data to a CSV file.